Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday and Juneteenth to everybody. We have our analysts here today, as usual, and a special guest analyst who I'll introduce in a moment, who will be doing what we do for you every day, which is go through the Gen AI news and let you know whether it is optional, important, or essential to tune into. We have, as I mentioned, a special guest, Ashish Batia, product manager at Microsoft. Ashish is always watching and giving great insights and has agreed to come on and share them live with us. So we're happy to have you. So, Ashish, thank you. And I'll put you on the spot for a minute. Two questions. One, what product or products are you managing at Microsoft? And two, give us a fun fact about yourself.
Thanks, David. It's a pleasure to be back here. I am product manager for something called AI Builder. It's a no-code AI platform within the larger Power platform. So that's what I spend most of my time. The last couple of years, I've been diving into the waters of Gen AI, like everybody else. It's been pretty interesting. Outside work, I'm an archer, so I shoot competitive archery.
Oh, amazing.
So that's my fun fact.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, you've joined us on a good day. I think we have a pretty interesting set of articles, and I saw from our pre-rankings that John is particularly excited about most of them. So we'll be hearing a lot of cases for important and essential today. We'll be talking about Cerebrus again, which we've talked about a few times, a chip maker who's making some amazing product. We will talk about the new models that Facebook, look at me dating myself, Meta has released. And we will also discuss a product for change management that is a Gen AI tool, and some China news beating some pretty top models with an open source model. So lots of interesting things to talk about. But what we're going to kick it off with is going to be potentially our most important article, because it is an article from our own John Sfiokla. So Ankaj, we'll let you give a quick introduction, but then John, I'd love it if you could give us the kind of full synopsis of the article, and then we'll discuss.
Sure, thanks, David. So the first one that we have for today, as David mentioned, is by our own John Suyokla, and it talks about insights on leveraging computability for competitive advantage.
All right, John, what were you thinking here?
Sure. So what this magazine is it's I used to be an academic, and this is the executive version of the MIS Quarterly, which is an academic journal aimed at MIS and computer science academics, as well as executives. This one is more executive focused. In this, I lay out what I think is a more general, a lot of people talk about digital twins. They talk about software eating the world, and so forth. And there's two things missing, I think. One is that people don't have a more general framework, because AI to me is a set of techniques that sit within a broader concept. And that broader concept is computability, which is, can we compute the world? And so I lay out a model that I do two things in this article. One is I lay out a model, what I call the law of computability, which says computability of a phenomenon, of a task, of a whatever, is the product of the level of knowledge of the phenomenon. That is, do we have categorization for its attributes, correlation, or a full causal model, times digitization of the phenomenon equals computability. AI accelerates both sides of that, right? It accelerates both the digitization of the world as well as our understanding, but it's just one of many techniques that we do to advance computability. And so that's first. I lay out that general argument that gives, I think it's a better framing of AI sitting within that. And then the second thing is I tie it to economics, why it hits the economics of an organization. So I talk about the WINS framework, who's most susceptible to computable issues, and second, to tie it to operating leverage, which is if I can compute a function, and I give an example of underwriting and insurance. So if I have a causal model and you only have a correlational model, or I have a categorizational model and you have a correlational model, you win. right? So if you're higher in computability on a task that is important to your value added in the marketplace, you win. And so it's really about competitive advantage is really about surfing computability of things that matter to customers. And so anyway, that's the article, and it's freely available through the MSQE.
Yes, I thought that was really helpful to have that model of categorization, correlation, and causation, and to think about the fact that you don't necessarily have to have causation to have success. You just have to be better by
Right.
one step than the competitors. So I thought this was a great framing and helpful for CIOs. And as you also mentioned in the article, the nature of your framework, the nature of generative AI gives CIOs a way to actually quantify, the value, which is something that they don't always have the ability to do very easily, right? To quantify business value. Paul, I assign this to you. What were your reactions?
Yeah, so I know it's incredibly self-serving to call this essential, but I do think it's essential. It fits in. If you listen to the NVIDIA CEO, he talks about the tokenization of everything, the tokenization of everything that's digital, the tokenization of the physical world, tokenization of drug discovery, tokenization of chemicals. Stefan Wolfram talks about that nature is way more computable than we ever imagined. And I think what John's doing a great job on is using that and tying it to competitive advantage or warfare advantage. And no one's really doing that. And it's more profound when you start intellectually flying at that level. And it gets way away from this notion that we've heard now, I've heard 4 times this week in senior management meetings. This is another IT project. This is not another IT project. I think John was very articulate. If I'm doing it the old way for drug discovery or for stock trading or for oil exploration, and John's doing it the new way of computing everything and realizing what nature is, he has got a skill and a competitive advantage that's non-trivial that will manifest in its marketplace in 2 to 3 years. And I don't see enough discussion on that. And John's one of the few people that I know are connecting profound technical capability with impact on competitiveness.
Yeah. Before we leave this, let's get a fair assessment. Of course, we have interest in this, as you pointed out, but
referee.
Feel free to be
downgrading.
feel free to weigh in and not have to agree with us. What were your thoughts on this?
And so David, I briefly kind of skimmed through that. It feels like a dense 4 pages. Should spend more time. I agree with Paul, and we'll see this in the Facebook releases of the model as well, right? They're moving away from these diffusion models to tokenizing even audios and video and image data, right? So that's the state we're going. We'll digitize everything, we'll tokenize everything, we'll predict tokens for everything as well, right? So how do you use AI to build your competitive advantage is key for CIOs to understand. And it's not an IT project or lift and shift project that people might equate it with, right? You have to rethink the stack is the meta point I feel in my mind.
David, you're mute.
I'm muting myself. We'll go essential on this, baby. All right. Ankaj, what do we have next?
Okay, the next one is from VentureBeat and talks about how Meta has released a flurry of new AI models for audio, text, and watermarking. So some of these models were announced earlier, but details like their weights were not announced, but now they are in the public domain.
That's right. Ashish, you just alluded to this earlier. You'll take the lead on this one. What were your thoughts?
I would rate it as an important article. It talks a bunch about watermarking, which is super essential. I feel watermarking would become a consistent feature for all kind of types of generation, whether it's text, audio, or video content. And that way it becomes easier to figure out what's AI generated, what's human generated. I feel that that's going to be essential going forward. Without that, we don't have a basis for what's human one machine generated. Interestingly, they're releasing the watermarking model under commercial license, so that's kind of a new. They're also releasing a model called Jasco, which is music creation model. So it's kind of Suno competitor. So that was interesting. Lastly, I saw that there's a model called Chameleon, which is what I was kind of referring earlier to what Paul was saying. Instead of using a diffusion approach, they're going at a tokenizing approach. So it's multimodal at the core, that it will tokenize text, audio, video, everything that is coming in, which is kind of where GPT-4o and its efficiencies are as well as compared to the previous version of Turbo, GPT-4 Turbo. And then I think Gemini claims as well that it's natively multimodal. So I think that's the move that Meta is making with Chameleon. I'm unclear how Chameleon and kind of Llama fit into the bigger picture, right? Or is Chameleon the next kind of wave of things? So again, interesting article. It's not very dense. It's very light. It's more of an announcement kind of an article. The announcements are important. I'm not sure if the article I would rate as an important article.
Right. As a musician, I was particularly interested to see Jasco. Tools for music production notoriously have a huge learning curve, right? There's just so much functionality in them. To be able to sit there and type, hey, please, make the vocal track clearer, please bump up the bass drum on this. When that comes along, I will be super excited and do much more to be able to produce my own songs. So that was a pretty cool one from my point of view. I also tag this as important. Any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I put it as important. I thought that they took a page from the British Empire, which basically was built on three kinds of addiction: tobacco, sugar, and opiates, right? And so this is great. I mean, they're handing out matches and then charging you for the fire extinguishers, which I thought was a real, a sound strategy. It's been proven by the Brits for centuries. Anyway.
All right, we're on a roll today. We've got an essential. We've got an important here. What do we have next?
Okay, the next one comes from IEEE Spectrum, and it talks about how giant chips are giving supercomputers a run for their money. As David was mentioning, this is around the Cerebra's wafer scale chips.
Yes, we've seen this company come up a few times. I've yet to hear them actually having a product in a supercomputer that somebody's using, but they come out with these really amazing products. What did you think, Paul?
Yeah, I rated this as important. This is one of the few companies that I've been meeting that I know that gets under the crawl of NVIDIA. So this is clearly on NVIDIA's radar screen. They claim that they are faster than a supercomputer that Frontier, I think it or whatever it was, that did some of the protein folding at DeepMind is important. And certainly for folks in drug discovery, this is essential for them, but I rated it as important.
All right. I mean, what do we think it's going to take for this to start to see some penetration?
Well, but I think if you go to their website, there's a ton of penetration. They're being used in research labs. They're being used by drug companies. It's not being reflected in the articles we're looking at, but there's no question in my mind these guys are working with the spooks and the nukes and
the spooks being the defense folks and the CIA, right, John?
Yeah, NSA and CIA and so forth. Thank goodness we have an NSA general now working with OpenAI. Very good for us. Anyway, you look at this stuff. I had to go and look at what a femtosecond is. It's 15. It's a quadrillionth of a second, right? I mean, I've heard of it, but I mean, this is, and now they're talking about molecular interaction, being able to model molecular interactions. And in addition, what was amazing about this is that they do a sparse matrix. They get rid of the zeros and then put them back in, and to run the large language models, because a lot of the large language models waste time on zeros in the matrix and energy. It's running LLMs at 1/3 of the energy, which is amazing. And then the repopulation and that includes a repopulation of the matrices after they do the sparse matrix stuff which takes 7% of the energy, and then the accuracy they claim is the same. I mean, if they can take just to take, an LLM down by 1/3 of power consumption, especially given the size of the models is going up, that's huge. And they're just at the beginning of this. And then talk about molecular modeling. My God, I mean the actual. So they're within 7 orders of magnitude of actually modeling reality down at the molecular scale, at the molecular speed. That's friggin' amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's breathtaking improvements at the hardware level, at the software level. It's beyond my monkey brain.
And the thing, and it's already outperforming. What's the name of the supercomputer? Frontier.
Frontier,
yeah. And this. We're on a whole other thing.
I think the point that John was making around energy consumption is super important. Like, it is already starting to appear that we might not hit a data kind of cap or data kind of limit or compute limit, right? Because we'll keep churning more data, we'll keep building out more compute, but energy might be a limit that we might be hitting. Like we're seeing some of the cloud companies are being told by the grids not to put cloud center in a specific area because they'll bring down the grid. So to be able to do a model computation at 1/3 of the cost is probably the most important kind of element. And I think there'll be more innovation in this space where energy efficient computing will be something that we'll keep.
And Ashish, to your point, last year, one of the John Warner's MIT events, Sam Altman had called in, and someone asked Sam, what's going to slow AI down? And Sam thought for a second, and he said cement. And he meant data centers and energy thing here, which was really, I think, apt to what you're still talking about.
Yeah, the other thing is that the kind of math that's being developed where you can, back to the computability argument just for a minute, that if you think about the LLMs, the n-dimensional matrices that are there, you can have a lot of sparse matrices, right? As you begin to try to go from categorization to correlation and even computation. To create the math that you can then clean out those matrices. Think of it like from computer science, like memory management. Like when memory management advanced, all kinds of things became way faster, right? Because you're able to more efficiently manage active memory. So think about those matrices as constrained by the relationship between power and sparsity. And now we're starting to get at the sparsity. So the compute value is going to get, our ability to compute more and more is going to be better and better. And then the speed is also coming down. And so, if you think about the frontier, we're at microseconds now, when we get to nanoseconds, how much more can we compute of reality? It's just going to be mind blowing. And if we can get the math to fix the sparse matrices, because reality is sparse, right? The space has only got, 1% of space is occupied, when you look at planets and stuff like that. So reality is sparse, the matrices are going to be sparse. If we can figure out how to deal with the sparsity, at the same time we're taking speed up, we're going to compute way more of reality.
All right. Love the discussion on this one. Clearly, we're marking it important. I mean, I almost feel like we should be raising it from essential to the level of conversation that we just had about it.
I think it's essential in terms of understanding what the frontier of computability is.
All right, I'm doing it. We're going essential on this one. We've got an E, an I, and an E today. We are cranking. All right, what do we have next?
Okay, the next one is from Runway, and it's about their new Gen 3 Alpha video generation model.
This thing looks so cool. I mean, I don't think it's usable yet. I don't think that we can check it out. And man, is this company good at picking out some really great imagery to use in their promotions. I mean, all of these videos just look unbelievable. What do we think about this one, John?
Yes, well, I rated it essential. I feel it's a bit of an inflation. I just was so taken by the images. I'm okay with important. but it is just mind blowing. I mean, my undergraduate degree was in visual and environmental studies, and man, this is just so cool. This is like, I actually thought about being a filmmaker for a while, and it's just mind blowing. It's funny. Many years ago, when we wrote the first stuff on managing the market space and exploiting the virtual value chain, we imagined a reality which would be incredibly plastic, and then you'd have the analogy we use was different layers of interaction, so commercial, emotional, social, whatever. Although we didn't see the social network, that was the big thing we missed. But this idea of making reality more and more accessible and visually like this is just amazing. And the other thing to keep in mind is that I was just reading this thing about Meta and how they're they're reorganizing their reality stuff, and the Ray-Ban glasses are really doing well, and they are simultaneously launching an environmental operating system, what they're calling EOS, and then also more and more device, and they're open licensing the device interaction stuff. So they're actually, I think, may crack the wearables. And when you think about the wearables and the environmental operating system and this kind of visual capability, and then I think the environmental operating system is actually going to have a functional layer as well. So it's going to have physics and stuff like that in it. We're getting there fast, man. This is just wow, but important.
It's moving fast. Important. Ashish, what did you think about this one?
I was trying to correlate this with Lunar Lab announcement last week. I tried that model. Again, some of the visuals are amazing. I'm sure what they're putting out there in the website, a lot of that is cherry picked. When I tried it had issues with physics. I've not tried out this model myself, but this space is interesting. I feel we're going fast towards this future of a personal entertainment, personal kind of content creation, and just super empowering, I feel, as John was saying. What does it mean to the big Hollywood studios? That's another question, I feel. Super important.
Yeah, and we're moving toward co-creation, right? I mean,
Co-creation.
Look, as horrible as social media can be, I think it shows there are a lot of people who are creative, entertaining, funny, really enjoy doing this, right? And I see it not just being personalized, but we're going, I feel like we're going to have these tribes, right, of people who are creating one particular show or something and create like a whole community around it, and then everybody watching it. I mean, those are the positive signs, right? I know that there's obviously some potential negative consequences that we're going to have to mitigate, but I mean, I think this could be really, really cool where we could be moving to in terms of community created content.
One quick note I want to have, David. I think I'm not sure it came in our news, but Runway ML had an AI film festival in May.
Yeah,
Announced the leaders, and if you go to the website, it's fabulous. You just spend like the winners are 3 and 4 minutes each. Just spend a couple minutes, and it's breathtaking. What's and the creator economy is booming, and what's at the top of the creator economy with AI is breathtaking.
Yeah, I have to say, similar to Ashish, when I go in and I try to play with these tools, I have limited success. I tried to animate my comics. It's really not good at animating drawings. Like, I think it's a lot better at working on real world scenarios. But clearly, you can do something with it if you become really good with it, because they've got these videos that they show that are amazing. So I agree, this space is moving quickly. The announcement itself, I guess we'll flag it as important. The actual announcement is light, and it's really, I think we're just flagging it more as important and awareness of how fast this space is moving, right? All right, we haven't had an optional yet. Are we going to come up to one now? What do we have next here, Ankash?
Okay, the next one again from VentureBeat, and it talks about how China's DeepSeek coder model has become the first open source coding model to beat GPT-4 Turbo.
Yes, and I have to say, as I read this, I thought to myself, would I use this model, knowing where it came from? I hate that I think that way, but it's the way of the world right now. John, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I rate it as important. I think the whole, for both the fact that it's, deep open source and it's from China. And, I think that, look, the Chinese are doing a great job of really hitting America. Think of it this way. I think of it as the Chinese did a whole mercantilist strategy where they dumped a whole bunch of things in the U.S. They dumped steel. They dumped certain kinds of food products. They dumped cement.
Solar panels.
Pardon me?
Solar panels.
Solar panels, right. And so what they're doing here is they're dumping AI. They're creating, and it's a great strategy. And so I think we really have to pay attention to it. And the funky thing here is that, when you dump steel, okay, you put a bunch of, European and US steel makers out of business. When you dump AI, you get an intelligence asset. So it's a very, very smart strategy. So I think it's important. This is just the beginning. They're gonna keep running at it. They're gonna keep throwing money at it. If I were them, I'd do the same thing. But tax collections are going down. It helps you with your surveillance state inside China. It's a beautiful thing.
You think the government will step in here and stop this dumping?
It's gonna be really hard in the open source community. I think it's gonna be really, really hard. This is the soft underbelly of our intelligence stuff, and anyway. Personally, I think we should stop. We should be more market based and be giving our citizens more cyber tools to sniff and so forth. I think that more like the Second Amendment. We have to decentralize, and anyway, it's the whole thing. I don't believe in the gun version of the Second Amendment, but let's say for a minute that we think like that the idea of the Second Amendment was that you can overthrow the government, which, by the way, I don't think it was. But that's another whole thing. But let's say it was for a second, that we need to arm the citizenry with ways to do this stuff. Centralized control is not enough, because human beings will run around in centralized control. The rebels always win eventually.
Yeah, Paul, how did you rate this one? You're on mute, Paul.
I had it as important. I mean, I think it, even for the people doing a slow, not a fast follower, not a leader, but a slow follower AI strategy, need to keep their head above the water, understand the major trends. And the China's a major trend, and developments in the chip hardware is a major trend, and the computability as it affects competitiveness in certain use cases is a third trend. So important.
Would you let your coders use this model over the ones that?
Absolutely not.
I mean, we're opining. You're doing this day in, day out.
Yeah. Okay, we're going important. I don't know if we're gonna make.
I'd love to know Ashish's take on this because he lives it day in and day out.
Yeah, let's hear from you, Ashish.
I thought of this is an important development just for the reason that Paul mentioned, right? When something frontier kind of gets released, we should pay attention to it. If you look at the details, this model is only behind 4.0. It kind of trumps everything else. But more than that, right, what John was earlier saying, I'm actually surprised that there is not much stuff coming out of China, because if you look at the papers that are being submitted, from a model perspective primarily, but if you look at the papers that are being submitted in the AI space, there is so much content coming out from China. So again, it's for everything that John was saying, I still feel that we should pay more attention to what's happening, the innovation that is coming, and how would we want to engage or not engage with that. That's our choice after all. But the pace of AI development is really, really accelerated out there, I feel.
Yes, I feel like a lot of the research papers that we end up flagging to have folks read, right, because we're kind of limited, we limit those given the technical nature and that they often aren't necessarily actionable at that moment. I feel like all the ones we've put through have been the ones from China, including one that I think just yesterday that we talked about. So yeah, the research coming out of there is substantial and cutting edge.
I'd say, sure, David. I mean, the CEO of Perplexity made a statement a few weeks ago I thought was interesting, that he thinks that the most leading AI will no longer be published because it's sitting in commercial things, and that we're going to see more and more proprietary research that doesn't get out. Ashish, are you seeing that, or you believe that's a correct statement as well, and China will eventually move to that, or?
I don't have ton of insights, Paul, what China would do, but we can see signals from Meta, for example, right? They're releasing most of the models. Right? They didn't make the Llama 3, this what was 700 billion parameter, or the largest version. That's not public yet. I'm not sure they're planning to make it public. I think they mentioned that they might or might not. Right? I still feel that leading edge, cutting edge AI, which is like the top of the stack models, they will stay closed. That's my assessment. I have.
Yeah, my guess is that will be true in the near term. New control points will probably come up, and then they'll might be open source. So you're looking like what Meta's doing. I think Meta is going to push hard to do more and more open source stuff, but then pick control points where they can extract value, like this watermarking thing. And we don't know yet where those control points are. So I would say yes in the near term, don't know in the longer term.
John, it also depends on the business model of the company, right? I mean, Meta is not monetizing AI, but OpenAI is, and Anthropic is, so it will depend a little bit on that as well.
Yes, and it's a frightening thought, but Meta may be our best bulwark against the Chinese, which is kind of interesting. between the rock and a hard place.
Good point. All right. I have a feeling our last article here that we'll bring to the stage may be the only one we rate as optional. I know I did.
Optional.
Gosh, give us the intro.
Yep. So this is a news release talking about how Prosky has launched a new change management generative AI tool called Kaya.
Yeah. What do you think about this, John?
Optional, no question. ProSide's just saying, hey, we're geniuses. We put all our stuff in the chatbot. We're the kings of change management, which may be true for all I know. But yeah, I mean, smart move. It goes back to an old article by Clay Christensen talking about automation of consulting, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, every ranking I see of the industries affected most by generative AI, professional services is usually at the very, very top of the list. And both of us, having worked in those firms, know that is very true, right?
Now, David, they're not at the top of the list. They're in the quadrant called in the crucible. So let's just get the right reference here.
Okay, you're correct. So they are in the top corner of that quadrant. Even.
That's right. In the WINS framework, they are in the crucible.
All right, we've got a couple of us on optional. Does anyone feel differently?
The only point that I'll make is, again, I thought of this as kind of optional news as well, but what was interesting for me is a company which has depth in a space, and they mentioned like 25 years of experience. How do you take that in a very disruptive kind of space that we are right now and translate it with latest AI into a new product, right? So that I thought is super interesting. More folks should take note of. If you have this kind of skill, if you have this kind of data, then you could kind of leap forward and kind of leapfrog other competitors in that space by bringing that into a new form factor with AI.
Very good point. Very good point. But we will go optional on this one. And Ankaj, do we have a summary? We have a lot of reading for folks today. We had interesting articles that, as John mentioned, called up a lot of trends that our leaders need to be aware of. We've got John's article as essential. We've got the Cerebras announcement as essential, important, Meta's models, Runway's new model, China making progress and having a model that does coding better than any other model. And then, sorry, Prosky, but you are the only one that we're not going to recommend that folks read. Ashish, thank you so much. Your insights are great. We love having you, and we definitely would love to have you back.
My pleasure, David. Always is a pleasure kind of either watching it or being a part of it as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being a faithful watcher and your comments coming through. We'd love to see that. Any announcements or final thoughts?
One thing I would just add, John and I were on a call yesterday with the CEO and his entire management team, and we continue to see a real need that help these teams get alignment. There's so much different individual incentives. IT wants to do it, IT doesn't want to do. Marketing wants to do it, not do it here. Everyone claims it's a waste of money. The CEO not having information here. So this kind of idea that 5% of the CEOs are often moving, and the next 20 to 35% are really trying to figure out the right answer, and they need good information. So they had no idea, for instance, that you can take a search term, what's the best EV vehicle, and put in 5 different robots and get 5 different answers. They had no idea that for less than $2,000, you can get a no-code large language model for your public data on your existing website and PDFs, and have a chatbot that actually adds value today and allows your team to work. And you don't have to spend $50, $100, $200,000 to get something up and running that's really meaningful. So lots of education out there, and we hope to contribute to it. But it's just surprise. I shouldn't be surprised. I remain surprised because we're in it every day, but we realize that most people are running a business, and this is still a noise on the side, and making it real for their business still has many steps.
Good point. Good point. We are here to help. And we also offer a newsletter that summarizes everything that we talked about today. You can find that in the link to this episode, and find us on YouTube, find us on LinkedIn, find us on X. We're everywhere. And we love to talk about this. So reach out, and have a great day, everybody. Happy reading with all of the articles we've assigned you.